So our first reading from the book of Genesis, it offers us a familiar and a consoling, a comforting passage. And even more than just something to read and to hear or a story, it's a moment in time, a moment in all eternity, where God reveals to Jacob and to you a permission to be with him. So Jacob has arose, we hear, in the course of the night, taken his wives, his maidservants, his children, and he's crossed this river, and he's left them all there, and he was alone. In other words, all the comforts, the relations, the consolations, the good things that bring joy and peace into his life have been put aside, and he's alone. It's the kind of experience we have at various times in our life. Times when we have questions, desires, fears, anxieties, perhaps about God, about our own life, our own purpose here. When all of the safeguards around us we placed aside and we're just alone with God, which Jacob is in this moment. And what's so amazing and extraordinary is as Jacob encounters, as he meets God, he wrestles with him. He fights with him. Just as we at times, perhaps there's a suffering, a struggle, a sorrow in our life, and we wonder and we wrestle with God, how can this be? What is happening? Where are you? It seems as if you've abandoned me. Whatever questions and thoughts and challenges enter into not only our mind but our relationship with God, we realize here in this moment that he's not afraid or intimidated or dismissive of Jacob and his fighting with him. Just as he's not afraid or dismissive of you and your concerns and your questions and your fighting. And we recognize in this wrestling that there's likely a lack of, at times, a piety and a reserve, but it's raw and it's real what Jacob does with God. And what's even more extraordinary, after this whole night of fighting with God, God lets Jacob win. Now, of course, at any moment, God could easily defeat him because he's God, but he doesn't. He lets Jacob wrestle with him all night, and he even lets him win, and he blesses him. And it's comforting and consoling for us because Jesus on the cross, which is why we gather every day here before this altar, that place where his sacrifice on the cross for all of us and for you is made present. That moment in all eternity when he shows us what we're worth, what you're worth, which is everything. When he shows you that he is completely unafraid and unintimidated by everything in your life, that nothing scares him. We gather here in this place before this altar, before that moment, so that we can be with God as we are, with our strengths and our weaknesses, our joys and our sufferings, because he is not afraid of us, and he invites us not to be afraid of him. So Jacob shows us today that God desires a real relationship with you. And so we need never be afraid to come to the Lord, again, with our joy, with our anger, with our sorrow, with our triumph, because he desires to be with you, because you irrevocably and unmistakably are his beloved son or his beloved daughter.